All right, well, good afternoon, everyone. On behalf of Fortinet, we welcome you to the Bracketology and March Madness 101 experience with Kenny Smith. Thank you so much for joining us. We're excited to hear from our moderator, John Bove, and of course, Kenny Smith. But before we get to it, there's just a few things that we want to share. During our time together, everyone will be in listen-only mode. If there is a question you'd like to ask, please submit the question via the Q&A box or in the chat box. We'll ensure that your question is asked in the order that they are received during the event. The Q&A and chat box is in the toolbox on the bottom of your Zoom window. And on the top right corner of your screen, if you want to change the viewer perspective, we recommend changing it to speaker view. This way you can watch the experience on your full screen. So let's get started. To kick us off, I'm going to hand it off to John Bove to get us going. So John, I'm going to hand it over to you.
Great. Thank you so much. All right, appreciate the introduction. I'm super excited to be joined today by Kenny Smith. This is the third in our series of our March Madness bracketology. So Kenny, welcome. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me, man. Feeling good. I'm here in Indianapolis, and in a little quarantine room. This background setting is not my ideal, so excuse that.
It's all good, man. You look good. You look good. So pretty exciting weekend last weekend. Maybe talk a little bit about the matchups we got coming up. It's definitely a Texas versus West Coast thing we got going. So maybe some thoughts from last weekend, and maybe we could break down some of these matchups.
Yeah, but it's funny you said that because I believe it was put out that it's the first time, might be the first time ever there's not a school east of the Mississippi that's in the Final Four. So very interesting. I obviously have some Texas ties playing with the Rockets. Actually, the assistant coach there, Alvin Brooks, I knew well. He was the head coach when I was a Rocket. He was the head coach of the University of Houston at that time, so know him well. Rooting for them. Baylor, know a couple of kids that go there. I live in Los Angeles, so I know some of the UCLA kids. I've seen them, grow up, knew some of their families. So this is an interesting block of teams. Everyone always asks me, how do I analyze? I said, I root first, I analyze second.
Nice. Yeah, UCLA, probably the biggest surprise to be here after their win over Michigan last weekend. But, that Zaga team looks really tough. I mean, how do you see UCLA's chances against Gonzaga?
I mean, Gonzaga and Baylor probably been the most consistent and best teams all year. However, in a 40-minute setting in college basketball, you have a smaller amount of possessions as well, so you can control a game a little bit easier than a 48-minute game in the NBA. In the NBA, you have 24-second shot clock. You have all of the different things that, speeds the game up. Where in college basketball, if I take, so John, if you and I are outside shooting and I take 30 shots and you take 30, we might not could tell who's the better shooter. But if I take 100 shots, I'm still a better shooter, I think, than you, John. And that's what college basketball is. They're only taking 30, 40 shots sometimes. So the best team doesn't always win, even though Gonzaga on paper has the most talent.
Yeah, really interesting. Yeah, that's a good point. You probably are a bit better of a shooter than me, Kenny. Although
100 shots, I'll get you. The averages will start coming out.
Yeah, they probably will. And defensively, the Zags, were really impressive the other night. I mean, watching the game, almost felt like there's maybe 6 guys on the court. I mean, they are just ruthless.
Yeah, that was one of the most impressive defensive performances, I would think even Mark Few would say. I don't know if that's been their calling card all year, but they were very impressive. They were able to, really execute a game plan that just stifled USC. They have, a phenomenal talent in Evan Mobley. But they and actually the other Mosley, Isaiah, his brother, but they really never got going. And that you do have to credit their defense.
And talk a little bit about a few. I mean, he has really built them into quite the powerhouse. I mean, you know, when you look at the landscape of college coaches today, he's definitely up there with the top of the class for sure.
Well, it's not new. You know, now, you know, he's been in the Final Four. He's been in the final game. He's, you know, he's done a lot of great things. He's got pros in the league that are successful. I think this is probably his first big starting to get recruiting classes. He was doing it by transferring overseas a lot before, and he still does. But I think now he's starting to get that recruiting class that's ranked in nationally, that to add on to that. This is like the first time, I think, for that. But they've been arguably in the last 10 years the most consistent basketball team in college.
So talk about UCLA and this and then they match up. What has to go well for them in order to you know, bust another bracket? Because Kenny, I don't know about you, but my bracket does not look. It's got a lot of red lines all over it. So
for them,
what do you think?
Yeah, for them, they just have, it's ball control. Your guards, Tiger Campbell, who's their point guard for UCLA, has to control the tempo. He can't turn the ball over. He has to embrace the traps, embrace the pressure. And then if you're able to, again, keep it into a 40, 50 possession game, you can win. But if you go up and down, you're turning the basketball over, the game gets into 60, 70 possessions, I don't think that you can beat them that way with the talent that they have. But they have Johnny Juzang is a very talented wing player for UCLA. We saw that last game. He shot the ball extremely well. Jaime Jaquez is another talented wing player for UCLA. So they have some components that are different than what the Zags have seen, I think, as well in the tournament.
Yep. Yeah, Juzang definitely filled it up. That was a fun game to watch. What about let's go to the other side. Let's go to the old Southwest Conference reunion here with U of H versus Baylor. U of H has had a pretty impressive season to get to this point, and I think, you know, you talked about Baylor earlier, maybe all along being one of the favorites. You know, how do you see this matchup going down on Saturday?
Yeah, this is going to be a fun game because they're both super athletic. Kelvin Sampson does a great job, you know, obviously at Houston. Both coaches do a great job, you know, at their universities. They both are super talented, super athletic. So I think coming up to this point, each team would admit that they were physically better than the other teams as well, not just prepared. This will be the first time they're both seeing someone who they're not physically better than. So that's why this game to me is a toss-up. First time, I think Mitchell, the point guard Mitchell, could be the difference maker because of his speed, quickness, and his toughness overall. But I think this is the first time they're seeing someone that's like-sized. You know how we say like-minded? What's the word for like-sized?
Yeah, for sure. And Baylor is just that. I mean, they have the ability inside or out. I mean, their guards are really good. And
the guards are really good. Mayer is really good at the wing. They have all the components to, you know, be a national championship team.
Yep. So you're the emotional side of you here. You're taking it back to Houston. That's who you're pulling for, huh?
Well, my emotional side is to see University of Houston versus UCLA.
Oh yeah. Okay.
I live in Los Angeles. I live literally 15 minutes away from UCLA. So my emotional side would say UCLA and Houston, Clutch City.
Nice. Clutch City. I love it. So if we play this forward, like the way people think, maybe the Zags go on the run, historical context to, you know, what would be a 33-0 season for Gonzaga. I mean, what is that? You know, looking at the landscape of the history of college basketball, where could you see this team ending up?
I mean, the focus to win every game is phenomenal. even to get to the Final Four undefeated. It's a phenomenal mental fortitude, mental concentration. Keep your eyes in front of and keep your hands on the steering wheel. They never let off. That's an unbelievable accomplishment. At times, I've even said, as a naysayer, I'm like, well, the conference they also play in allows them to have that type of season, which is different. But even though, there are teams that do prepare for you. I'm St. Mary's, University of Pacific, Pepperdine. They know your strategies and they know your what you like to do. I just feel at times that conference has not always had the talent pool that Gonzaga was pulling from. So I think that would be the only down thing. But the mental fortitude to keep your hands on the steering wheel for that long, that's a heck of an accomplishment.
Yep, for sure. We talked a little bit about the teams. What about, for everyone that's watching, is, for each of the games, who are some of the impact players that you think it's going to come down to? If it ends up the way you want it with UCLA, U of H, who do you think those guys are? And if it goes the betting line to, the Zags versus Baylor, who are those players that we should be on the lookout for this weekend?
I think there's, Mayer, Mitchell's getting a lot of attention at the point guard for Baylor, but Mayer is another kid for Baylor that really has a unique skill set. I mentioned the two kids at UCLA, Johnny Juzang and Jaime Jaquez. They are not traditional wing players. They handle the ball with such ease. They almost play like a point forward, all three of those guys. The Zags, Suggs is probably, he's going to go to the top pick or the second pick in the draft, depending on the need of a team. If a team needs just the best player, they're going to take Suggs. If they're going to need a wing player, or someone else, then possibly Mobley at USC. But Suggs is the best player, has been best prospect, so to speak, in college basketball. And then as a sophomore, I think a sophomore, junior, Timmy from Gonzaga has been really extremely good. I call him semi-pro because he looks like the movie Semi-Pro when the actor, I'm going blank, but he had a movie Semi-Pro and he had a headband.
Yeah, that Will Ferrell.
Ferrell, yeah. Will Ferrell, he had the headband, the big goatee. So to me, Timmy looks like Semi-Pro. So my nickname for him is Semi-Pro.
I love it. So what about, obviously I think it's fantastic we have March Madness this year because last year we got to miss out on it. And, I think everything that goes along with that for, the college basketball fan in the U.S. I mean, the tournament's a little bit different format this year, but looks like we're going to get it off, which is great, both the men and the women. Any observations from the new structure? The timing has been a little bit different, for this year.
I'm just happy to see it, John. I'm happy to see the tournament go. On television, it looks great. I mean, this is going to be my first time being at the arena here in Indianapolis, but on television, there is no drop-off in excitement, no drop-off in enthusiasm from the kids or passion or pain. Kids crying when they lose. None of that's changed. What has changed though, being here in Indianapolis. If I would have gotten off the plane here in Indianapolis during the normal Final Four, this city would have been electric. It would have been, every coach in college basketball would be here. They all have their meetings. You see every collegiate great. You see all of these build-outs. It's concerts. It's fun. It's just, I can hear myself think here. Like, it's a little bit, that's the part that is very unusual. Being here as a physical spectator is very unusual.
Yeah, nice. Well, you yourself had a bit of experience, playing in the tournament in your playing days. Anything that stand out to you, both as a player and then, maybe just historically, anecdotally, some of your best tournament memories?
Since I wasn't I've been blessed to win 2 NBA championships, but never college. So I will say the best team never won my year.
Well, you're
So I always thought we were the best team. I always felt we were the best team. Man. It's like, man, we were the most consistent team, but in a 40-minute scenario, team would get us. But you know, I think overall, no, the one thing that stands out is just the pageantry. When you come into the NCAA tournament, there's a movement and a feeling that is so unique that even pro sports can't replicate, because you know you have teams, so many teams in such proximity for a weekend. So you get to see, you know, when you're on the NBA and you're in the NBA Finals and you're playing the Knicks, you go to New York and everyone's a Knicks fan and everyone's screaming at you. But when you're in the NCAA, there's 4 teams here. So you might walk one way and Gonzaga fans are going to scream at you. You walk the other way, the Houston fans will scream at you, walk the other way. So you get that unique blend of having 4 different fans the first, you know, that weekend, or because all weekends are 4 teams there. That's a unique feeling.
Yep.
You know, when 4 teams are, or 3 different cities are you rooting against you. They don't want you to win.
And as a fan, I love, like, you know, Saturday we got back-to-back games, right? You don't get that very much in the NBA with as much meaning.
No, you don't get it at all. We never do that. Never.
Yeah. No, that's very good. Yeah, I was saying, that freshman team, your freshman year at college, man, like, what was it like? Well, just walking in as a freshman into that, you know, that pedigree of talent.
Well, first and foremost, playing for Coach Dean Smith, that was, you know, an out-of-body experience. He was, you know, it was like being coached by, you know, Nelson Mandela or Mother Teresa. Like, it was like, he's a unique man. He was a unique man. And so that was the first thing I noticed more than anything. Secondly, you know, we had the great talent. You know, we had, you know, Sam Perkins, Brad Daugherty, who were, you know, NBA All-Stars and champions. Some guy, what's his name? Michael Jordan. Yeah, that guy. He was a, you know, pretty good baseball player. So
he was pretty good.
sold a couple of shoes in his day. But yeah, just a unique setting. And for me, starting as a freshman, which was unique then, because most guys stayed 3 to 4 years in college basketball. So I was only I think the 4th or 5th freshman ever in the university to start as a freshman. Now, if you don't start as a freshman, you transfer. But so I think that was pretty unique for me. And I treasured out those days there.
Yeah, nice. We do have a couple of questions, and the first one is kind of on, you know, with your alma mater. There was some news today about Roy Williams.
I thought I was going to get by without answering that question. You know, you're the first, John, you're the first person to ask me.
I'm sure
I have not answered my phone. People have asked me to call them. I have not answered my phone. I have not said anything. So this is the first time I will be talking about this.
The floor is yours.
Well, you know, for us, you know, Roy Williams, you know, comes from the pedigree of Dean Smith. He not only continued what Coach Smith was doing, he actually was able to excel and create new lanes that, you know, weren't there. He had a unique system, great passion. You know, you see him laugh, you see him cry, you see him scream, you see him hug, all in one day. You know, that's the one thing about, you know, watching Coach Williams. My son just played there 4 years, played under him at Carolina. So a bittersweet day today. I know we have a new beginning starting, but, you know, that era of basketball gentlemen, you know, is kind of gone for a second. So for me, you know, I'm just sitting back, listening, seeing what's going to go on. I really believe that it should be someone in the Carolina family that continues that tradition.
Yeah, that baton from Dean Smith to Roy was just that. So you kind of have to think that you would maintain that tradition. Carolina, from the outside looking in, is definitely a tradition-rich, school, and the tournament's always a bit more fun when you got those thoroughbreds in there, the Carolinas. And
yeah, I mean, but I think it's also fun when we're not now too, because it does shine a light on that basketball. The excellence is played at a lot of different levels and places. We have the resources to kind of attract the higher level athlete or skilled athlete earlier than everyone else. And sometimes, you get spoiled. Even as our Carolina fans, we get spoiled, and now we're not spoiled anymore. So that's why I like it. I do like that. And we got to work. And, but I think Carolina is, again, with Coach Williams, we're going to miss him dearly. He's not going to be gone anywhere. He's still going to be probably around the program. He's going to be at practices if he wants. He lives in Chapel Hill. He's not going in. But just him not being at the helm, and when he walks out, it's going to be a different environment because it's something, he's only not been him or Coach Smith on those sidelines at some point because he was assistant coach there as well, only for about an 8-year period, 7-year period. It's either been Coach Smith or him for the last 50 years. Yep. So it's going to be a unique environment to not see one of them sitting on that bench.
You talked about his emotion that he put into it, and maybe talk a little bit about that, the difference of coaching at the NCAA level versus what you did in the NBA and the role of the coach, because it's not as much of that rah-rah, right? And it's not as much of that emotion-based. And is that because of the player, or talk to us a little bit about that?
Well, you're coaching men mostly. You probably also have men in the NBA, and then most of those guys, you're coaching 25 and older, and obviously college basketball, you're coaching 25 and under, 23 and under, 24. So you're getting a different experience because not only are they, from a basketball standpoint, they're finding themselves, but they find themselves as young men. And so, of course, we have the one and dones that go to the NBA, but there's only one or two on each team, one guy like that on each team. That's not the normality of it. So you have to be a mentor first. Your mentorship is, as a college basketball coach, is your first job. You have to be a mentor. Your second job, you have to be a basketball coach. So if you think about it that way, then you're going to have a high level of success because your players are going to be your trumpet. Your former players will be a trumpet. They will speak loudly about how you are and what you do and what you've done for them, regardless if you've helped them correct their jump shot, their defensive stance. So mentorship is the number one goal, I think, and should be, of any college basketball coach.
Yep. Great answer. Good quality of any leader, right? Whether it be in my business and in running a sales organization, it's all about mentorship and trying to find and develop the talent that you have and find those inner skills.
Yeah, and it's difficult to do that in the NBA because most players are their own entity. So they have they have their accountants, their lawyers, their agents, their friends, their family. They have their own group they walk into you with. And you have that smaller group, you're trying to only coach basketball. Because if you go into those other realms, then it becomes too convoluted because you may have to trade the guy or he may not be there. So NBA coaches don't always have a mentorship role with their players because they come in with an organic package already set, where an 18-year-old kid has none of that. You're helping form that, the idea of who should he have around him so it's a whole different scenario.
You talked about the one and dones, and I think college basketball has had a big shift from when you would see juniors and seniors being the foundation of these teams. And now you've got a lot more of the turnover and guys moving more quickly to the league. How do you think that has impacted college basketball? And do you think it's been a good or bad trend for the sport?
Well, John, let's be clear. A lot of them aren't transitioning to the NBA. They're transitioning to the G League. They think they're going to be transitioning to the NBA. But if you look at the G League, the NBA, which is our subsidiary league to the NBA, there are more players that were college All-Americans in there probably than there are in the NBA. Because, you know, there's only been 5,000 people in the history of the sport that's actually worn a uniform in an NBA game in the history of the sport. So there's this illusion or delusion that you're going to be a one and done and you're going to have this long career. You know, that's an abnormality that happens. And that's the part that I don't think that most of the players are realizing right now. And I think they will, because you think about it, there's only 12 spots on every team.
Yep.
There's 48 players getting drafted every year. So in 5 years, you would have, if you just did that math, in 5 years, that means everyone who's in the league today would not be in the NBA today.
Yep.
They wouldn't be there. It's impossible. So, which is impossible. So guys are playing 10-year careers, 8 years careers, they would be gone. So that's the reality of it. So I think that there has to be, I think some of the players, if they did, I call it bake instead of trying to microwave, they would actually have careers. Some of the guys who are in those leagues just didn't take their time to bake.
So then it kind of begs the question, you know, they go to the G League, they go overseas because they want money, right? They want money for all the reasons that we all want money, you know. Do you see a day when the NCAA modifies how this for-profit business waterfalls money down to players? And do you think that would benefit some of these players that are not baked?
Yeah, I do. I do think that it's a, everyone says it's a slippery slope, and I say it's not to me. I think that, you know, it's the NCAA is the only place where the workers don't get paid. It's the only amateur sports. It's the only place ever. Like nowhere else can you find that, you know. And they go, oh, well, you know, these sports subsidize the other things. Yeah, but our show is one of the successful shows on TNT. Yeah, we subsidize other shows because we get sponsorships in. That's how it works. But we still get paid. So I think that that's one of the things they have to look at. And my thing would be, if you're truly talking about student athletes, is to create a fund for student athletes. And when they graduate, they receive it. But they have to graduate.
Yep.
Because if you call yourself a student athlete, you have to do both. You have to be able to graduate and you have to be able to perform on the court. And then there's a stipend that comes your way to start your life. That is not hard to do because of the amount of money that's generated in college basketball. Create a fund for seniors and anyone who graduates. If I graduate early in 2 years, so if I leave and go pro, I don't get it. I didn't graduate. I didn't go. I'm going pro. I'm going to have another career. But if I stayed 4 years and I played for your university, I help bring people in the stands, there should be a stipend that would be given to me if I graduate.
I think you've got a platform for a future career, Kenny, once you get tired of hanging out with Ernie and Chuck.
Well, you know, I've been one. So I just know, like, I said I did my part, you know, and I don't think that the scholarship equaled the part that I played. I just don't think that it did at the university. I don't think that for most players, I don't think it's equivalent anymore, because we didn't have television revenue. We didn't have streaming revenue. We didn't have big arenas. We didn't have we didn't have the things that there is now. So no, it's not equivalent anymore. The exchange at the fast food restaurant isn't the same. I paid for this and this is all I'm getting. No, it's not, the exchange isn't the same anymore. You know, it's not the same.
Yep. So you, yeah, it's a really interesting point when you put it in that perspective. Only 5,000 people to play in the league, you know, and you know, kid from New York City goes to Chapel Hill and ends up winning two championships. Talk to us a little bit about, you know, your own journey. What was some of the advice? What were some of the things that you did personally that made you be one of those 5,000 and even the smaller population that was able to put a ring?
A lot of prayer. So my knees are sore, but I think, you know, always, you know, like being blessed to make the right decision. So I didn't always know I was doing it. Should I go to this high school or that one? I would choose, and I'd had choices, and I go, I'm gonna go to that high school. No, it's gonna be a challenge. I'm gonna go to Archbishop Malloy. I never went to Catholic school, which at that time basically private school, which you know, because there was no private schools then. Everything was Catholic schools in that era. That was private, and so I'm gonna go to this private school. It's gonna be a lot more demanding. I could go to this school here, but I'm gonna go there. Then turns out I have a Hall of Fame. I didn't even know this. I had a Hall of Fame basketball coach there, and he helps groom my talents. I'm gonna take this. I'm gonna work out with this guy. Every decision that I thought about or prayed about, somebody was praying for me. I guess in that as well, because every decision just turned out to be the right one. And I always just was blessed to have those decisions happen. I didn't want to get into television, and I was like, man, I should play one more year, you know. And they were like, this job might not be here next year, Kenny. And the guy named Michael Jackson, not the singer, but he played at Georgetown. He was the talent VP. So it might not be here, man. I know you can play a couple. Why don't you try it? And I said, you know what? I'm not going to play it in the NBA, and I'm going to be a broadcaster. Here I'm 22 years later, just blessed to make the right decision at that time.
Well, I'm sure glad you got into it. I love the inside crew. We'll talk about that in a little bit, but we got some questions. Let me throw a couple of these your way, because I think there's some interesting ones. You know, one of the ones here is best men's college basketball player this season. Who do you think? And then also the same question about the women.
I don't know. I'm not qualified enough to know all of the great women basketball players, honestly. So I would just be regurgitating what I've heard, and I never do that. I'm the eye test guy. so in NCAA men's basketball, I said the best two players that I have seen is Suggs from Gonzaga, Mobley from USC would be the top two guys that I've seen play this year.
Nice. All right, here's one. Any plans on getting into coaching post your illustrious broadcast career?
Well, for me, it's like, because of what I do, that comes up a lot. I break down a game. Like, so I'm like, this is why they're gonna lose, or they did lose, and they go, wow, it's right, you know. So you get to see it. So I think at some point, if it's basketball, it's me. I think that for me, it's just basketball. You know, I've been in this field my whole life. You know, I've been in basketball longer than I've been not in basketball. So I would consider myself an expert. Charles and I have this thing, Barkley has this thing about, said, no one's an expert. We could never call ourselves expert. I think we are experts. I think when you're in a field for 30 years, 40 years, and you've done every level of it. You've done from, if I was a plumber, I have a good friend, and his family owns this huge business, and it's Kohler. I'm sure you heard of Kohler Plumbing. So I know David Kohler real well. He was my roommate for one summer. He was at Duke, which is even crazier, and I was at Carolina. He roomed with me and Joe Wolf, who was actually from there. But he knew from how to put the pipes in to where how the water flow all the way up into the executives, he's an expert. He's an expert in his field. I know every step. I've been on AAU, junior high, biddy basketball to pro. Every aspect of it. I'm an expert. So that's why I think it comes up. Because if it's basketball, it's me.
Yeah. So I like this one here. Question about, Kenny, can you get into the little bit about the Duke-UNC rivalry? And what is it like to play in that game?
Well, it's interesting because, yeah, when I was in college, North Carolina State was just as big or bigger rival. Duke was on their surge. They were just getting there. It was that first year of them becoming a national power. First 2 years, where North Carolina State had Jim Valvano, and it's a state school as well. So you had two state schools that were, 30 miles apart, and they were producing the pros at the time, North Carolina State, before Duke. So I always said we were always everyone's rival. They weren't our rivals until recently, when they started going crazy with championships. It's like, no, they're a rival now.
Nice.
Yeah, they're a rival. But before that, we would just used to say, no, they're a tough game. They're a tough game. It wasn't what it is today. It was not. But as a former player, I root against them the same way. So when I see that game on television, I'm like, oh, I'm going to that game. I am locked in for that rivalry for sure.
Like it. Awesome. Here's a good one. Not counting you, of course. Who is your all-time college starting five?
Based on their college career, not their entire career. There's a difference.
College.
Yeah, because based on their college career, Kareem Abdul-Jabbar would be number one. I think he's the greatest basketball player who ever lived because he was the greatest at all levels. He was the greatest high school player of the year, greatest college player of the year, MVP in the NBA. No one else can say they've done that. So to me, he's been at the excellence at all levels. Michael Jordan is the GOAT, but he's I think the best basketball player to ever live. I would say Bill Walton, same way at UCLA. Those UCLA Bruins in all those years, that's why both of those guys would just stand out because they were part of those, 8 to 10, 12-year runs that they won the national championships. A guy who doesn't get the credit that he deserves, Ralph Sampson, I think would be in the top 5 of all-time college basketball players. And then now I have to go guards. This is hard. Because Michael wasn't as dominant as he is as an NBA player, but I still would put him on my top 5 players in college basketball. But he wasn't as dominant. He was more dominant NBA player, actually, than he was a college player, in my estimation. And point guard, I got to move. The best point guard, it's going to be between Isaiah Thomas and Phil Ford. Those are the 2 best point guards. So if I had 6, if I had that team, I'm not losing.
I mean, I could ask you a ton of questions about Jordan, but what do you think made Jordan take his game to that next level? If you're saying he wasn't the most dominant in college, but what flipped that switch when he got into the NBA that set himself apart? Because I do have a question here about who's the GOAT, Jordan or LeBron.
Yeah, I mean, he's the only player in the history of basketball that when he left the game, his weaknesses when he started were his strengths. For only player, when he came into the NBA, they said he's an okay ball handler. When he left the game, he was one of the best ball handlers. Guys are practicing his moves down, his ball handling ability. He was a good shooter. He was shooting over 50% from the field, and we're not talking dunks. We're talking jump shots. He was defensive. He was the only player, him and Hakeem Olajuwon, to win the MVP, the defensive award, and the MVP of the finals in the same year. Like, everything that was a weakness was a strength. It became a strength. I don't know any other player that's done that. Like, there's certain great players that are in the game right now. They had weaknesses when they walked in the gym, walked in the NBA, and they're still not strong at those things, you know? And so I think that's what separates it.
Nice. And went on here. So just you talked a little bit about your journey and your faith that got you to where you are, and other people praying for you. But what about from an advice standpoint? There's a good question in here. What is some of the best advice you've gotten along the way that helped frame who you were as a player? And
I don't know if it's singular. I think the advice I get was plural. Like, it was consistent messages from people I respected or cared about me. Not really I respected, let me take that back, because I think that people cared about me. It was consistent messages that I would always, hear, and then I would see results from those messages. I think we all hear the advice, but we all don't get the results. And when you get the results with the advice, you keep following. So the messages are only here as the results that it provides. Even from a business standpoint, you can tell your team, John, everything you want, but if they don't get any results and it doesn't reflect in their paychecks as well, they're going to go, what am I doing this for?
That's right.
So when you're giving advice, there has to be an analytical measure that it's going to have a result that you can point to. That's the advice. So all the great advice I have gotten, now that you said it, there's an analytical point that I can point to that's measurable to say that the advice that they gave me actually worked.
That's great. It's really good. Good question here. What's the best game you've ever played in? What goes back? Maybe pick one in each. Pick one in
Wow.
college.
My favorite college basketball game was my first. My favorite game ever was my first college basketball game. Because I was starting as a freshman, and I told you the list of guys that was on that list. And so as a point guard for North Carolina, you come out of the tunnel, you dribble out because you're the smallest. So we kind of go in size order. And I was the smallest. So I'm dribbling out. And as you come out and the band is playing, and the 22,000 people, 10,000 people are rising at one time. I get chills thinking about it. And you're going on that layer line and you're like, whoa, I'm actually made it. Like, and you see the camera, the TV cameras. Because when you play in high school, most of the time, you're playing in gyms that only seat, 1,000 people. I was from New York. We have small gyms, 500, 1,000. It's packed, but it's not 10,000. And then when you're practicing, even in that arena, it's empty. So it was the first time I saw the arena filled. And I was like, whoa, this is different. So to me, and I look and I was like, man, I made it, man. So to me, that's my favorite basketball game ever in college, my first. And in anywhere, even with the championships, that's my favorite moment.
Yeah.
And then, so I'll just leave it there. That's my favorite basketball moment ever.
So were you a Knicks fan growing up, I assume?
Yes, big Knicks fan.
So how did that series, NBA Finals, feel being in the Garden against your rival team? How good did that feel?
Feels great, man. I'm still smiling. But I always tell like all my friends from New York, because it was the first time like my friends rooted against me. Because we all grew up New York fans, and they wanted me to play well, but wanted the Knicks to win. Like, I was like, no, you can't. They used to try to come over to the game, like before the game or in between to the hotel. I was like, no, you can't come through. Because they would wear their Knick gear. They'd have the house. Like, no, man, no, you can't come through. So that was fun. I always say that we New Yorkers did win because I was from New York. We had real, actual New Yorkers on the team. Myself, Chucky Brown, and Mario Ellie.
Yeah.
We're real New Yorkers. They had guys who played for the Knicks. That's what I always say. So I said New York won both ways. So that was a lot of fun. A lot of fun playing against your hometown. And then winning in an NBA final, yeah, for sure.
Yeah. Well, if you don't mind, maybe let's talk a little about Clutch City a bit. You know, I graduated from St. Pius X High School in Houston, Texas in 1994. So Kenny, I mean, I was a huge fan of you and the Rockets. Just talk a little bit about, you know, what that was like, you know, and once you do that, I've got a follow up about how do you feel that you would have competed against Jordan Bulls if Michael wouldn't gone to play baseball?
We'll start with that one. We would beat them. I think we would beat them. I really do. I say that, and not to be braggadocious, I just think, you know, a couple factors. During their first run, when they won the first three, before we won our two, in the regular season, now Michael and the Bulls are different in the playoffs, but we were, I think, 6-1 against them, or 6-2, or 7-1, some absurd number. We were beating them pretty regularly when they were winning championships in the regular season. And they had a very difficult time matching against, obviously, Hakeem and us on the perimeter at that time. Secondly, when we were winning championships, now people saw the documentary. Horace Grant was not a Bull then.
Yep.
He was in Orlando. And Dennis Rodman wasn't a Bull. He was in San Antonio when we beat the Spurs. So they were I think they would have been much too small to play against us without those two guys. Now, if they had Dennis Rodman, I'd have been like, whoa, wait, it would have been, I don't know. That would have been a tough, but in my mind, knowing that they had no Dennis Rodman and no Horace Grant, and they would have had to play against us just with Michael and those guys, no way, I don't think they would have done this. There's no way. I just think they're too small. And that is the biggest reason more than anything. Now, if they had those two guys in those runs, then I said, all bets off.
Yep. Nice. Playing with Hakeem, you know, for those years, it really probably was the best player in the world at that time, right? Offensively, defensively, you mentioned the MVP.
He was Michael Jordan.
He defensive player of the year.
Yeah, he struck fear in opponents like Michael did. Like I used to see it. Like you know how when you come into an arena and you watch guys warm up and they're looking in the back at us, and like it's just little vibrations that you catch that when Michael was in the building, he used to bring, and Keem brought that those 2 years, every night. The best player on the planet, most honorable man I've ever been around as a person. So I enjoyed playing with him to the fullest.
Yep. He's my all-time favorite athlete. It was great to be a fan of y'all's back then. So I was super excited when I got the chance to talk to you about that. So let's a couple things on the NBA, and maybe we talk inside the NBA, your show. So how do you see, you know, the Nets have made a lot of moves. Do you think it's going to be enough to get out of the East, and do they take down the Lakers and LeBron?
Well, I think that everyone's vying for themselves because of the injuries of the Lakers that say, hey, they're not the Lakers that we saw last year, possibly. The Nets have, assembled a lot of, veteran talent. We're going to see if those guys still have, the guys they brought in, have anything in the tank to really contribute at that level. But the three guys that they have that are in their prime, Kyrie Irving, obviously, Kevin Durant, and James Harden, they have everything in the tank. So they didn't really need anything, to be honest, but size. They could have had, just added some more size, and it didn't have to be an all-star type player. So I do like what they did. I like, what the Lakers are doing. They're adding pieces, Andre Drummond, like everyone's gearing up. This is going to be an interesting, Miami got better. They were in the finals last year. They're like, Philadelphia is still good. Once they get, Embiid 100% healthy, like this is going to be an most interesting playoffs in a very long time.
Yeah, it's going to be good. What about MVP? Who do you think right now is your leader in the clubhouse?
I would say my leader right now would be James Harden. What he's done since he's gotten to Brooklyn has been phenomenal. I think the Joker and Embiid had the early lead, but I think the Joker's kind of slowed down a little bit. But James Harden is arguably the best player to watch right now in basketball, and he's still not in great shape. Like, the guy's not even in great shape. He's still the best basketball player to watch.
Yeah, they are a fun team. So you mentioned you had the opportunity to join, inside the NBA. Maybe wanted to play another year or make that move. You guys have really built quite the legacy, and I know there's some documentary stuff going on about your show that it's been a really good watch. Just talk to us about how you exited being an NBA player, and now you are, a part of such a substantive piece of NBA life now today.
Yeah, we're the voice of basketball. We become an iconic show, like Monday Night Football was with Andy Don and Howard Cosell and all those guys. Like, people talk about us in the same breath as that. So when you get a documentary done about you and you're still alive, either you're really good or you're really old. That's what I said. But I'm just hoping that I'm really good and not really old yet. But for us, it's just four guys I don't think you can have a duplicated, but it's also just four guys who have a distinct personality, a distinct point of view that is unbridled in their thought. We don't feel at any time bridled by it. Our producers, Tim Kiley's our producer, and he just lets us go. And at the same time, there's a formula, but the formula is you better be informed and you better be ready to go today. You better have your job. You better have your part ready. And that's what we stand by. And the other thing is, I think what makes us a little different, maybe not a lot different, is we listen. Because a lot of shows, John, when you're on that show, they go, okay, the producer go, okay, Kenny, you're going to go for 10 seconds. John's going to go for 10 seconds. Brittany's going to go for 10. And Nick's going to go for 10. And you're like, all right. But then no one listens because you have 10 seconds, you're getting your point out. Our producers, Charles will start talking in the middle. So I'm, wait, what did you just say? Like, I'm going to stop it just like a normal conversation. Like, we're not going to, like in a normal conversation, if someone says, well, the Knicks are doing well. This is how I feel, John. Like, I watch other shows. If they did this, the Knicks are really good and the Lakers are great. And, I think the house is on fire in this building. But I think also the Clippers, no one would stop and go, wait, did you just say the building's on fire? Like, no one would stop. They let them get their 10 seconds out. We would never let that happen.
That's great. Yeah, I had written down, first of all, is it fun as it looks to the audience to be a part of? And then second, Is there any type of script? Or do you guys go into any kind of outline for what the show?
There's an outline. Yeah, there's an outline. We're going to talk about certain things that are topical. And I know our producers and our production team goes crazy sometimes because, we'll have a whole, they'll have a script of like the topics, never what we're going to say. I have no idea what Charles is going to say, or Shaq or Ernie. They have no idea what I'm going to say. And then we have an outline. We're going to talk Lakers here. And then Charles will come in and say, I got something I need to get off my chest. And then it just changes the whole format. And then we go, all right, well, what do you have to say, man? Go, say it. And then the whole night, that's the topic, because they also know that, again, we're experts. So we also know the pulse of the league. We know the pulse of the city. We know the pulse of the country. They believe that we understand that. And not, I think other shows, again, they follow those trends. I think we create what the pulse is. Like, we create the topics, What are we going to talk about and what people talk about outside, even in pop culture?
And do you think that comes from the fact that you guys are just so confident in your being an expert of the game? I mean, how have you guys been able to just recreate what a studio show is?
I think you have three guys, and including Ernie. I'm going to throw Ernie in there, and he's not going to like it, but he's in it. We have 4 guys who think they're the best at what they do and the best basketball minds ever. Like, I don't think there's no one in the world knows more basketball than me. Charles doesn't think anyone in the world was a better player or knows more basketball than him. Shaq, I don't even have to answer that one. Does not believe that there's anyone. So now you have these super confident, and Ernie doesn't show it, but he doesn't think any announcer or anyone is more prepared and does what he does better than him. I would guarantee you that. He might not admit it, but I'm admitting for him. I know he thinks like that. So you have these 4 strong personalities that, like I said, unbridled and unwavered by their thought. So if Charles says something, I'm like, I don't believe that. I don't care if Charles, like Shaq says that, I don't care. You play with Kobe, what? I don't believe it. I don't believe, or yeah, I believe that. That's 100% right. Yeah, Shaq is right. Chuck is right. So I don't know if everyone stands as firm and have that delusion of grandeur that we have as well.
Yeah. Ernie's definitely your glue guy, man. That guy's super talented. The way he just keeps you guys on track, and
no, he's more than the glue. He's the substance. He's part of the components. Like, he's not the glue. He gets away with that. I told him he got to stop. He's not. He gets in the background. He gets to get away. He has the subtle jokes or he starts the jokes that go on that Shaq does. The reason Shaq thought that he tripped I don't know if you saw the thing when he trips over the monitors, and he goes, first person he says is, Ernie, you did that. Because he knows Ernie's in on it, all that stuff. He didn't go, Kenny did that, Charles did that. The first person he screams out is, Ernie, you did that. Why? If Ernie's just the glue guy. he's in all of the mix.
That's awesome. Well, Kenny, we're coming up on top of the hour, so let's bring it back to the Final Four this weekend and maybe some predictions.
Rooting. I'm not predicting. I'm rooting. Listen, don't bet on what I'm saying, because I'm rooting, guys. I'm rooting for Houston, and I'm rooting for UCLA. Do I think those are the best 2 teams here? No. But am I rooting for them? Yes. So, end the story. So, I never, in college basketball, the fun thing about it, I can be a fan, and I don't have to always be an analyst, because these 98% of these guys, 99, will never get paid to play basketball. So I could just root for guys. I met this guy, what? He has a great story. Oh, I'm rooting for this team. Like, that's how I am. Now, I will tell you why they win, or how they won, or how they can win. But in the end of the day, they still have to execute it. And so I'm just rooting. So I'm rooting for Houston. I'm rooting for UCLA.
So then what wins? Rebounding and defense, or prolific scoring this weekend?
Well, it depends on the game. The pace of the game is going to win UCLA Gonzaga. If UCLA can control the pace, that will win. So pace of game. Then for Houston and Baylor, reminds me of when Louisville played Phi Slamma Jamma, and it was just up and down and dunks and block shots, and they might not have the great players like, they had Hakeem Olajuwon and Clyde Drexler and all those guys, and Rodney McCray and all that in that game, guys who were NBA stars, but it has a lot of that feel for me. It's going to be a Roberto Duran, Sugar Ray Leonard. It's going to be a Mayweather. It's not going to be a Mayweather fight where he's a tactician. This is going to be, I just think I'm better than you, and I'm going to take you. And I think it's going to be a lot of that with those guys.
Yeah, and I think you said it best earlier. It's the first time that they're seeing someone of their size this season. Right?
Yeah.
Yep, that's going to be good. All right, one last prediction. Who you got win the NBA? Who's going to win the NBA title?
Oh, man. Injuries are going to play everything. If everyone's healthy, I'd say the Lakers go back-to-back. But everyone's have to be healthy.
So 36-year-old LeBron, he can take down those.
No, he's not 36. He's not 36. He's 36 to humans. But on his planet, he's still young. He's not from here. You didn't know that, right? He's not from this planet.
It's amazing how he just does not slow down.
Yeah. He's not 36 in his planet. From his planet, he's like.
You said about Michael that when he got to the league, when he left the league, his deficiencies when he got in were his strengths. You can also say a little bit about that about LeBron too.
Yeah, but no, not as much. Michael's the only player in the history of the game. LeBron, certain things, he's gotten better at for sure. His shooting, outside shooting, his 3-point shot has gotten better.
For sure.
But Michael Jordan, everything that was a weakness was the strength of his game. Everything.
Yeah, nice. Well, Kenny, I can't tell you on behalf of Fortinet and our partners and customers, we really appreciate you taking the time. As a Houstonian, to get to talk to you for an hour has just been a real treat. Thank you very much for all you do, and we'll keep watching you on Inside the NBA. We'll watch you this weekend covering the tournament.
Oh, man, thanks a lot, man. Anytime, John.
Good stuff. Thank you, sir. See you.
All right.
Thank you, John. Thank you, Kenny.